Okay guys, today we're going to talk about cellular structure and function. Okay, so cellular structure and function. If you recall from the cell theory, it said that all living things are made up of cells, that all cells come from pre-existing cells, and that cells are the basic unit of structure and function, which means whatever the organ is supposed to do. Okay, so let's take for example the muscle system. Okay, it's in charge of contracting muscles across the levers to cause all the movements that we do. All right, and that means if the muscle system is supposed to be a contracting unit, that means the cell as the basic unit has to also contract. And the function of the muscle cell does just that. All right, so some examples of these particular structures and functions. I am going to go ahead and go with the muscle cell. So this is going to be an elongated fiber. Okay, and our muscles are going to be bundles of these fibers, and each of these fibers are striated, and these striations are going to be the locations of the contracting units. Okay, so each cell has a specific structure that's going to give you the function. So this is a muscle fiber or muscle cell. Structure equals function. Okay, another good example, and I'll just go ahead and change colors, we'll use the red, are red blood cells. And so I'm going to kind of draw these concave discs, kind of looking like donuts here, so let's pull that up a little bit. Concave discs, or sunny side up eggs, whichever one you want to think of them, these red blood cells, okay, or concave discs, okay, are going to be used to increase, or this shape actually increases the surface area, which allows that oxygen, diatomic oxygen, to attach. Okay, the more surface area you have, the more hemoglobin you can have, and the more oxygen can attach. And so once again, the structure of the red blood cells lends itself to the function of moving oxygen through the system. The last type of cell I want to go over just real quick for familiarity purpose is going to be a neuron. So I've got a cell body, and I've got these attachments, these dendrite attachments, and they're going to be attached to a long axon. Okay, and that's the basic structure of a neuron or nervous system cell. And if the nervous system cell is to transmit electrical impulses, okay, quickly and efficiently, gotta write that here before I forget. Okay, so the purpose, or the function, excuse me, is to transmit electrical impulses. And so look at that design. It's perfect. It's just like any circuit board or stereo wire that you might see. You're going to have a place for the electrical impulse to come from and process and then go to the spot that it needs to go to. All right, and it's actually opposite. It gathers the information, processes it, and sends it. And so the neuron function is equal or equivalent to the neuron structure. Okay, there were 3 scientists involved in developing that cell theory, and each of them were looking at different types of cells. So we had one guy, Schwann, was looking at animal cells, Schleiden was looking at plant cells, and Virchow was looking at bacteria cells. And what they all came up with, besides the cell theory, is that cells are going to have a unique structure, okay, depending on their function. They're going to have a unique location in the body, and so certain cells that do certain things are going to be located in certain places. And last but not least, they're going to have a unique internal structure. And so what we're getting ready to discuss here is going to be a blanket, typical animal cell. I am going to draw an animal cell. We're going to look at a plant cell on the screen here, but it's going to be typical. So it's not going to be every single animal cell looks like this, but most animal cells look like this. So I'm going to go ahead and use black. I suggest if you have some colored pencils to go ahead and get those. I'm going to make my cell, I'm going to try to do 3D. So I've got my cell, and it's getting chopped. A little chunk is getting taken out of it. And so here's my cell. You can tell Miss Hart's taken a lot of art classes. And so this is my cell that has gotten a chunk taken out of it so that we can see what's inside of it. All right, so this boundary, I'm going to go ahead and kind of color that in. This boundary right here is a structure known as the cell membrane. All cells have a cell membrane. Okay, all cells. So plant cells, bacterial cells, everybody has a cell membrane. What you need to remember, there's a couple things. Cell membranes are selectively permeable, which basically means it's going to choose what it lets in and what can leave. All right, so it's just like a gatekeeper or a locked door. Only certain things can get in and certain things can get out. All right, otherwise you need to remember the structure of the cell membrane was the phospholipid bilayer we talked about in chemistry of life. The lipids are going to be hydrophobic, which makes it a good barrier. Since this outside external environment is water, the inside external environment is mostly water, and so this lipid bilayer is a very good boundary. Okay, so it's a selectively permeable boundary. And that's the first internal structure, structure that we're going to talk about with the cells. In the middle of the cell, we have a predominant feature, and it is the nucleus of the cell. We'll go ahead and call that a good nucleus. Okay, this nucleus is going to be, like I said, a predominant feature. I'm going to go ahead and draw an arrow out here for the nucleus. And its main job, what it does, is contain the DNA. Remember, the DNA are in the instructions for all of the cellular activities. And so the nucleus is going to hold all that DNA. So I'm going to go ahead and draw the DNA, which is in the shape of chromatin. So it's kind of like a ball of yarn, or not even a ball of yarn, just a pile of yarn. Okay, so that's chromatin. We'll go ahead and label that real small here as DNA. Also within the nucleus, we have a structure that is going to be very important, and it's called the nucleolus. So it's going to come out here as well. Nucleolus. Okay, and this is where ribosomes are made. Okay. Outside of the nucleus, we're going to have a series of folded membranes. And these membranes are going to be connected. And so I'm going to do my best to kind of show you how they're connected. And they're going to go all the way around, even though my model is not going to show it. Okay? But it's going to be a series of folded membranes with lots of surface area. And this is called the endoplasmic reticulum. Okay, there's two types of endoplasmic reticulum. There's rough and there's smooth. But the basic, when you think of endoplasmic reticulum, I want you to think of a assembly line. Okay, so this is where we're going to make some of our carbs and some of our lipids. The enzymes are there to make that stuff. We also have surface area. Okay, with all those folds, we're going to have a lot of surface area for chemical reactions to occur. So lots of things happen. When we talk about that metabolism we talked about before in chemistry of life, that's going to take place in this endoplasmic reticulum. It's a predominant feature outside of the nucleus. I do want you to remember, I'm going to go ahead and underline this so you guys can, there is smooth and there is rough. Okay, and we'll come back to that. I'm going to underline these, like I said, so that you guys can kind of keep track of them in your notes. And then last but not least, also I can keep track of how many I've done. Okay, we will come back to smooth and rough here in a second. Okay, between the nucleus and the endoplasmic reticulum and the membrane surrounding the cell, we have this fluid, viscous fluid on the internal side or internal portion of the cell. And this is called the cytoplasm. So I'm going to go ahead and do that in blue as well. I'm going to come out this way though. Up here, I'm going to say cytoplasm. Okay, there are other words for the cytosol. You might see that word in some of your drawings. But the cytoplasm is just that viscous liquid portion. Okay, liquid portion inside cell. Okay, so basically everything in between the boundary, the cell membrane, and the nucleus is going to be the cytoplasm. And so now we're going to start talking about some of the specific structures inside the cytoplasm. So remember, these internal structures, the organization of each cell is going to be different, but this is going to be typical for most. Okay, and I'm going to make this quick. We have about 6 more to do. So inside the cytoplasm, we also have these structures called ribosomes. And I'm going to embed them on this endoplasmic reticulum because that is where we get the word rough endoplasmic reticulum. And so these ribosomes are located on the ER, on the endoplasmic reticulum, and they're the site of protein synthesis. So that's where the proteins get made. Very important structure in the cell. There are some free-floating ribosomes, so I'm going to go ahead and draw some out here in the cytoplasm. Okay, I'm going to make them green, but you need to know that most of them, the majority of them, are embedded on this ER. The ER that is not embedded with ribosomes is what we call the smooth ER. Okay, also outside of the nucleus in the cytoplasm, we have these little kidney bean-shaped structures, and they have a large number of folded surfaces on the inside, so it kind of looks like this. I know my drawing is great here. And I'll draw another one over here. These are called the mitochondrion. Okay, we are going to focus on these a little bit further in another portion of this, but the mitochondria you need to think of is the energy organelle. Okay, this is where cellular respiration takes place. Okay, so it is the site of cellular respiration. It is the organelle responsible for making energy for the cell. All right, so if you remember the formula for cellular respiration, we take glucose plus oxygen is going to give us, we're going to release the carbon dioxide, water, and that very important energy molecule, ATP. And that takes place in the mitochondrion. Okay, we also have this series, this is kind of another folded envelope kind of thing. Okay, and I'm going to try to make it, it's terrible 3D. But there are membranes in there. This is a pouch, if you will, kind of like if you think of like pita bread and you had a bunch of pita breads inside of the pita bread, that would be this structure right here. And this is called the Golgi apparatus or the Golgi complex. Okay, the Golgi apparatus is going to be like the packaging center of the cell. Okay, so we're going to package and distribute the cell materials. So package and distribute cell materials. Sorry, that's written crooked, but okay, so package and distribute cell materials. Okay, also within the cell, in the cytoplasm, we're going to have some more, I would call them buckets. So I'm going to try to make them kind of 3D. We're going to have little pouches. And inside these pouches, are called vesicles. And these vesicles are used for storage. And so the things that we make in the cell, we're going to actually store them in vesicles. Vesicles are able to fuse with the cell membrane, so they can be kind of transport vehicles. And, okay, so vesicles are for storage. And there's a specific type of vesicle, so I'm just going to make it the same way. I'm going to make it blue, though. So we've got a specific type of vesicle that's called a lysosome. Okay, once again, it's storing things, but what the lysosome stores is digestive enzymes. And so when you think of the lysosome, I want you to think of it as the cleanup crew. Okay, so when the cell has debris or stuff that it needs to get rid of, it's going to package it in these lysosomes. The lysosomes are going to break it down and then export it out of the cell. All right. So vesicles are storage, and we have a specific type, which is called lysosome. The last structure that I need to tell you about is one of the most important ones, and that is the series, I'm going to make these kind of thick, the series of thick protein fibers that exist within the cell. Okay, these thick protein fibers, and they crisscross too, so I don't have to make them all parallel. Sometimes they crisscross, sometimes they X. Okay, so I'm just kind of making them random in here. There is more organization. But these are called, or these fibers belong to what's called the cytoskeleton. Okay, the cytoskeleton is going to be used for structure, so to keep the cell from collapsing on itself, and movement. Okay, we will also get into that when we talk about replication. Cellular replication, we'll come back to that cytoskeleton. All right, so basically that is your internal structure, cellular function, and I've talked to you about the different functions. Hopefully that helps, and I'll move out of the way so you guys can see it, and we'll talk to you later.